Welcome to Asian American Life. I'm Ernabelle DeMillo. March is Women's History Month, and we're celebrating Asian American women who are first in their fields. We'll take a look at how they broke the glass ceilings in their careers and paved the way for others. Legal Eagles, my special report on women soaring in law. Meet Iwen Chu, New York's first Asian American female senator. Plus, a tribute to CUNY's Betty Lee Sung, a pioneer in Asian American studies. The hidden history of Afong Moy, the first Asian woman to arrive in America. And a walk for peace, women crossing DMZ. This and more on Asian American Life. A new study found that Asian Americans are still underrepresented when it comes to the top jobs in law. I spoke to two legal trailblazers who are fighting to level the legal playing field. When Sudha Setty set out to be a lawyer, academia wasn't part of her plan.
Moving into academia is frankly not something I even thought about in law school. I don't think I really knew that that was an option.
But after several years as a private practice litigator, she made the move, first as a law professor.
Sometimes takes repeated conversations, maybe from different sources, right? Maybe you need to hear it from 2 or 3 different people, right? Because it takes a while to sink in that that's not only something that you might want to do, but something that you can do.
In 2018, she made history as dean at Western New England University's School of Law. She became the first South Asian woman in the country to serve as a dean in an ABA-accredited law school. Then, in 2022, she was hired as dean of CUNY School of Law in Long Island City. For Setty, who grew up in Connecticut with her immigrant Indian family, it was another history-making move. She is the first person of South Asian descent to lead a CUNY school.
An overwhelming number of our students go into public interest service work, and so what that means is that they are standing with mostly New Yorkers, but people around the country and around the world too, sometimes at their moments of the hardest moments of their lives, right? Their moments of highest need, whether it's for housing security, whether it's for kind of family placements, other things like that. That mission is something that resonated with me.
Setty is a part of a very small club of Asian Americans in leadership positions in the legal field. Being the first in your community also comes with extra expectations, which Setty fully embraces.
You don't want to burden people who are taking leadership positions by suggesting that they have a lot, this kind of whole body of work that they need to do in addition to their actual job. But of course that comes with it, right? And it's both work and it's an opportunity, right? I think there's something really powerful about seeing people who look like you in positions of authority, in positions of power.
A recent study by the American Bar Foundation and National Asian Pacific American Bar Association found that while Asian Americans are making some progress, AAPIs continue to be underrepresented in the top echelons of the legal profession, from law schools to the major firms and inside the courthouses.
We need to encourage our children to speak in class.
Doris Ling-Cohan is one of the original legal trailblazers. She was the first woman of Asian descent appointed to any appellate panel in New York, and the first AAPI woman to be elected to the New York Supreme Court.
It was not an easy path to have chosen. I never had a mentor. I did not have a political rabbi. And in the court system, having a political rabbi opens doors.
Ling-Cohan was born in Chinatown, the daughter of Chinese immigrants. Her dad worked in a laundry and her mom was a seamstress.
And so I went to college not thinking I would be a lawyer. And by happenstance, I was asked to represent someone who had his funding cut off from student government.
She found her calling. After graduating from CUNY's Brooklyn College, she went to law school. But the idea of being a judge wasn't something she thought about.
When I entered that path, there were no Asian American judges. And so even when I graduated and became a lawyer for a while, there were few Asian American judges, and I helped start the Asian American Bar Association, and one of our tasks was to increase the number of Asian American judges. And so I had no idea how to become a judge, and we invited people to talk to us about it, and through that process it put in my head that maybe it's something that is important to do because there are so few.
Today, there are still few judges on the bench. AAPIs make up 9% of New York State residents, but only 2.7% of judges. Even in retirement, Ling-Cohan continues to fight for more representation.
Sometimes we're considered invisible, and that's why it's important to raise our profile and to speak up and to have a seat at the table, even when people don't want us to.
During her 25 years on the bench, she became known as a fighter for immigrant, tenant, and LGBTQ rights. In 2005, she ruled in favor of same-sex marriage in Hernandez versus Robles. An appellate court ultimately reversed her decision, but she was ahead of her times. 6 years later, in 2011, same-sex marriage became legal in New York. And Ling-Cohan performed 24 weddings, including the wedding of 2 of the plaintiffs in Hernandez versus Robles.
By the people of the state of New York, I pronounce you a married couple under the state of New York laws.
She was also known for her mentoring and nicknamed the Pied Piper of the courthouse.
I mentored a lot of people along the way because I never had a mentor, so I felt it was important to help others because it would have made my path a lot easier. I always felt there was a secret book that nobody told me about, and if I actually figured out the secret book, there was volume 2 that nobody told me about. So I figured at least I could shed some light and help others.
For Asian American Life, I'm Ernabel DeMillo.
A Taiwanese-American immigrant who came to New York years ago as a student at CUNY recently made history as the first Asian-American woman to serve on the New York State Senate. It's been quite a journey for Senator Iwen Chu, a New Yorker and proud Brooklynite who believes that political involvement is the best way to make positive changes in our community.
I, Iwen Chu, do solemnly swear.
Iwen Chu was flanked by her daughter and her husband at her inauguration in February as the New York State Senator representing Brooklyn's 17th District in Albany. The newly redrawn district is the only Asian-majority state Senate district in Brooklyn and includes Bay Ridge, Sunset Park, Dyker Heights, Bensonhurst, Bath Beach, and Kensington.
That means I have 48% Asian AAPI community residents inside, but I have 20% Latino families, and I believe I represent the largest Muslim community in that district as well, in New York City. So that means this is a heavy immigrant district.
Being an immigrant herself, Senator Chu says she can lead from experience and represent the needs of her constituents with empathy.
I came here at the age of 27. So I was adult. I've been through, relearn the social system, education system, healthcare system, try to navigate, figure out how to settle down myself and then have my own family. I've been through all those things. So I can feel that incredible responsibility.
So having walked in those shoes yourself as a new immigrant in New York, what do you see are the most significant barriers that immigrants face?
As an immigrant, language capacity is the hardest challenge for them to begin to navigate the whole society. I see so many immigrant families, they struggle in life. When they have a challenge, they don't know where to go, where to turn, how to ask for help, or who can help them. I do see myself as like a portal and support system, a security net to carry them, to carry those families. Hello to Senator Chu.
In her office, the newly minted senator has assembled a multilingual staff who can provide support in Mandarin, Cantonese, Urdu, Russian, Arabic, Spanish, and even sign language.
That 9 language is just a minimum. It's not enough, but I wish I can identify more language capacity staffer on my team, then for those immigrant families, when they come into my office, they don't need to worry about. First thing, you don't need to worry about language. Just let me know how I can help.
Senator Chu says it's important for Asian New Yorkers to see political leaders who look like them, now more than ever with the rise in anti-Asian hate.
I have a senior telling me they're afraid to go grocery shopping. I have young mom telling me they're afraid to let their kids go into the playground. And those, they just feel like, we grew up here. We're as American as everybody. But again, we just don't feel we belong. And now they see me running and get elected. They feel like, finally, like we are as equal. We speak the same language. I can communicate with them in the same language, and I make them proud.
Born and raised in Taiwan, Senator Chu came to New York to study sociology at CUNY's Brooklyn College. She says the people she met at school helped make her what she is today.
People goes to Brooklyn College, they are from local. That's how I start to know more about local issues, community, and talk to different people who was born here, grew up here, they live here, because I came as international students. I'm talking to the Brooklyn Nine, and now today I'm a Brooklyn Nine. So I'm very proud, thanks to Brooklyn College for giving me that opportunities.
While Senator Chu is only a few months into her new job, it's clear that she has hit the ground running and hopes to open the doors for more AAPI political representation, especially for women. I'm Kyung Yoon for Asian American Life.
I'm Vivian Lee. Dr. Betty Lee Sung, a pioneer in Asian American studies, died a few days before the Lunar New Year. She was 98. American-born to Chinese immigrants, she fought prejudice with the pen, fueled by a desire to change the public's perception of Asian Americans by revealing their true stories as American history, including her own.
I was very defiant, and my mother would hit me with the feather duster, and I think I was whipped every day.
That's Dr. Sung in 2015 at the Asian American Asian Research Institute she co-founded at CUNY, talking about her autobiography, Defiant Second Daughter, her 9th book. For her fans and mentees, she was a trailblazer who knew when to step out of line.
She's very determined to be a fighter, no matter where she, was in a male-dominated world.
Many male-dominated worlds, from academia to media. As a Voice of America commentator, Dr. Sung was so appalled at demeaning depictions of Asians in reference materials she found, she decided to write her own. Her first book, in 1967, Mountain of Gold, was also the first book about Chinese Americans written by a Chinese American.
I had to do everything firsthand. I interviewed people, I talked to people, and that's how I got my information. And this is the real stuff.
The book became a blueprint for the first full-time course in Asian American Studies on the East Coast, which Dr. Sung created at City College of New York. The administration had come under pressure in the late 60s from students of color demanding programs that were more diverse. Dr. Sung developed the course into the Department of Asian American Studies and chaired it until her retirement from teaching in 1992. Her tenure was also a testament to her defiance.
The faculty and the administration didn't want me at all. One administrator said, "You don't act like an Asian woman at all."
Her career in higher education was not started by she looking for jobs in higher education. It was through Asian American students at City College, activism of that group of students. They require the school to hire an Asian American professor.
Dr. Sung's life over nearly a century was a playbook of firsts. She graduated Phi Beta Kappa with a double major in sociology and economics from the University of Illinois in 1948, when few women, let alone Asian Americans, were encouraged to seek higher education. She earned her master's in library science in 1968 at CUNY's Queens College, and her PhD at the Graduate Center and University Center in 1982. Before retirement, Dr. Sung published numerous papers and books on topics that expanded Asian American self-awareness: intermarriage, overseas adoption from China, and elder abuse in her community. After retirement, she organized thousands of immigration records in the National Archives into a genealogical database. And in 2001, she co-founded the Asian American Asian Research Institute at CUNY, to this day a home for AAPI research that includes a research fund that Dr. Sung set up for future scholars. New York State Senator John Liu, a former New York City Council member and city controller, remembers Dr. Sung as a teacher and torchbearer for student activists who wanted more AAPI representation at all levels of schooling.
We felt it was absolutely necessary and critical because there was anti-Asian hate in the 1980s. The best way we can honor her legacy is to ensure that what she fought for her entire life is truly institutionalized and memorialized. Asian American studies, not as separate programs necessarily, but truly integrated within our system of education. Look at the last few years of extreme anti-Asian hate. The only way we're going to get out of this continuous vicious cycle is by breaking out with education and teaching our school kids and future generations that Asian Americans are not a peril, we're not a threat, we're not a disease, we're people, we're Americans that contributed.
Her closing remarks at the 2015 book talk seemed to anticipate today's push for more AAPI history in K-12 curriculums in order to combat bias and hate, while also challenging today's AAPI community to continue what she started.
Please record your own story because what's out there is very, very limited.
She is survived by her 4 children and 6 grandchildren. The Museum of the Chinese in America in New York is planning a celebration of Dr. Betty Lee Sung's legacy in June. For Asian American Life, I'm Vivian Lee.
From marketing tool to sideshow attraction, the life of Afong Moy is something of a mystery, one that laid the groundwork for all other Asian American female firsts.
The subject of books, poems, and plays, Afong Moy, otherwise known as the Chinese Lady, was the first known female Chinese immigrant to the United States.
She was brought over in 1834 by a pair of merchants who wanted to sell Chinese Oriental objects to the American middle class. So they thought it would be a genius marketing trick to bring over a real live Chinese girl.
Poet, writer, and former CUNY professor of Asian American Studies, Sally Wen Mao did a deep dive into Moy's life during her Coleman Center Fellowship.
The story that I pieced together was so compelling to me that I needed to write a poem about Afong Moy.
Much about Moy's background and journey to the U.S. is unknown, and historical accounts leave more questions than answers, such as was she sold or was she taken against her will to this country? What is known is that a 19-year-old Moy came to the U.S. under the care of the Carnes brothers, American merchants who advertised Moy as the Chinese Lady, putting her on display along with the decorative Chinese objects they were trying to sell.
She was a public object, like people paid to view her, to see her, to consume her, essentially. They would have her do things like eat rice with chopsticks in front of the audience or walk around, with her bound feet.
Moy spent several years touring across the U.S. performing as the Chinese lady. According to records, she left the public eye for a few years, returning in the late 1840s, taking to the stage once again, this time as a true spectacle under the management of the great American showman, P.T. Barnum.
What I understand to be the end of Afong Moy is when P.T. Barnum basically published this note that Afong Moy was not really a lady. She wasn't born into this like upper class.
And by 1850, Moy disappears from public record. By this time, sentiment towards the Chinese in America had gone from curiosity to hostility, with the influx of Chinese immigrants. Now, close to 2 centuries later, the objectification of Moy still carries significance.
She was a spectacle, and that quality of being a spectacle and yet not really having a voice, like I think that feeds into a lot of like contemporary stereotypes about Asian American women.
Mao explores this idea of being seen but not heard in her book of poems called Oculus.
We don't really know anything about her perspective. In Oculus, I was working in the persona form, which is the type of poem that imagines another speaker, a historical figure, and I already had all of these persona poems from the perspective of Anime Huang, who was Chinese-American actress from the 20th century. And I thought that Afong Moy was her precedent. They both were kind of the object of like public scrutiny, the public eye, and they were both like extreme tokens.
Mao's new book of poetry, The Kingdom of Surfaces, comes out in August and continues this conversation, exploring even further back in history, with Afong Moy once again making a cameo. For Asian American Life, I'm Susan Jun.
This July marks 70 years since a truce ended active fighting in the Korean War. Because it only halted hostilities, the threat of a renewed, likely nuclear war on the Korean peninsula has lingered ever since. An organization of peace activists suggests a radically new approach, and a new documentary literally captures their first steps in North Korea as they make a bid to finally end the war.
Most people that travel to North Korea, they come here with preconceived notions. That the people have no independent free thinking. I wanted the delegation to be able to just really experience the North Korean people as human beings.
That's the voice of Christine An, the executive director of Women Cross DMZ. The documentary Crossings follows An and a delegation of activists in 2015 as they travel to North Korea. Their plan is to peacefully march through the DMZ into South Korea.
That militarized border was always meant to just be temporary, and 70 years later now, it has still kept millions of families apart.
Among the delegates, luminaries of other women-led anti-war and equity movements. Gloria Steinem, Code Pink founder Medea Benjamin, filmmaker Abigail Disney, and Nobel Peace Laureates Mairead Maguire of Northern Ireland and Lima Bowie of Liberia.
My country, Liberia, was at war from 1989 to 2003. We started the women's movement and did the protest for 2.5 years. We were able to reach out to both the warring parties and the government, which contributed to the end of the Liberian War.
When my sister's 3 little children were all killed in a violent clash between British Army and an active service unit of the Irish Republican Army. It just was the spark for thousands and thousands of people, 90% women, coming out to march for peace to say, we can solve this without killing each other. And it made room for the political leaders to move forward towards a peace process.
There are 3 goals with the Peace March: establish a peace treaty, reunite separated families, and include women leaders at all levels of the peace process. Marching was simple. Organizing it was anything but.
I think there's a general narrative about the war that it's not only forgotten, but that it's a conflict over there in Korea, and that it has nothing to do with, us as Americans.
Crossing's creator and Emmy Award-winning director Deanne Borsche Lim is a Korean-American adoptee. Her film challenges the established worldview of the North, that people there do not deserve empathy.
I think that it's very hard to look at people there, as human beings. I think that we also have a tendency as Americans to view ourselves as being free of ideology and being free of propaganda.
This scene in the doc shows a connective moment. The delegates meet North Korean war survivors, including Ri Ok-hui.
두 손을 모두 잃게 되었습니다. 지금 저희 나이는 72살이 되었습니다. 그러니 그때는 제가 7살이었습니다. 가장 고통과 가슴 아플 것은 우리 어머니들과 아이들이라고 하게 저는 이 세상의 전쟁을 막고 감사합니다.
I may never get to see the peace, but I need to work towards it.
82-year-old activist Young Che was born into a Korea still occupied by Japan and before it was partitioned. Her trip with the delegation was her first time back since emigrating as a little girl.
It's not necessarily saying that women are better or smarter than men, but the men have had the ball all these years. Not only has it failed to hit the goal, it has made things so precarious and dangerous. I think that one of the things this film can show, be of value for, is that it sees how people can do the unthinkable.
What we have on our side is that the American people are sick of endless war. I think we want a recalibration of how we are spending our money. And the way that we're sold is to continue to vilify enemies like North Korea.
Former President Donald Trump's travel ban to the North is still in effect. Meanwhile, Crossings has been screened at the UN, the State Department, and at film festivals across the U.S. and Canada. In late December, Christine Ahn was awarded the Peace Summit Medal for social activism at the World Summit of Nobel Peace Laureates in Pyeongchang, South Korea. For more information about Crossings, visit moofilms.org or womencrossdmz.org. For Asian American Life, I'm Vivian Lee.
Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to tune in at 6:30 p.m. Monday through Thursdays to watch Asian American Life. And if you want to learn more about all these stories, be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Asian American Life. I'm Ernabelle DeMillo. We'll see you next time.